Good evening, folks. Tonight we wrap up Movember with the story of failure, survival, and glorious comeback. Mark Agnew, he was rescued at the sea twice, and then he went on to break a world record in the Arctic. This is what really takes to fall, get up, and make it. Stay with us to get to know more about his story.
Hello, I'm looking forward to telling it.
Welcome back, everyone. Over the past few weeks, we've talked about men's mental health, suicide, relationships, addiction, all the stuff that most guys are told to keep quiet about. I wanted to finish with someone whose story really captures what it means to fail, to be broken, and still keep going. So my guest tonight, as I announced, is the adventurer Mark Agnew. He has been rescued at sea, he's broken world record, and he's brutally honest about what that did to his head. As always, the chat is open. You don't have to share anything personal, just be here, listen, and if something resonates, let us know. We are very keen to hear your angle too. And if you can, please support the Movember campaign. The link is in the description. And if you are new to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. Mark, you are very welcome to this podcast.
Cool, thank you very much. Yeah, it's I love any opportunity to retell the stories from the Arctic, so thank you.
Cool, let's get into it because there's so much to cover that I cannot wait any longer. So let me know, how did you get to this idea of kayaking through the Northwest? Let's get straight to the action.
So the Northwest Passage is the Arctic route that links the Atlantic to the Pacific. In fact, I have a map behind me that's sort of through the Canadian Arctic. And explorers for centuries have been searching for it. And then once they found it, trying to get through. And recently, people have began to wonder, can somebody make it through under human power? And for about a decade or so, different rowing boats or kayaking teams, they've all been trying to do this. And even as we tried in our 2 tandem kayaks, there were 2 other teams racing us to try and be the first to do it by human power. So it came to me probably just before I tried to row the Atlantic in 2016 and researching and getting excited about ocean rowing, seeing this like ongoing quest that people were embarking on, and I'm thinking, right, when I get back from the Atlantic and I have the appropriate experience from that adventure, I'm going to try and join a team to row the Northwest Passage. As it happened, my rowing team, which for years we spent planning and fundraising, fell out very, very like beyond reconciliation just before we were planning to go, a few months before. So at the last minute, I changed teams to our rival team on the kayaking team, and I went and well, the rest is history. We managed to get through, and we were very, very lucky. It took 103 days, and it was savage and amazing and beautiful, and one of the best experiences of my life.
Yeah, let's get into the details of those journeys. But I know that you had some issues on the way, and you were rescued twice. If you go back to those moments, what was the first thing that hits you, let's say, as an individual? Was it fear, embarrassment, relief, or something else?
So the first, I tried to row the Atlantic twice, and each time I said I was going to set the world record. If I was rescued 2 days in and then 3 days into those 2 adventures. And this is before the Northwest Passage. And in the back of my mind, I thought they were going to be a stepping stone to the Northwest Passage. The first one, I didn't really feel any, like, apart from the normal and negative emotions of something, a failure. I didn't feel embarrassed or humiliated or any loss of identity or anything like that, because it was so obvious that we had to get off the boat. We were with a guy who the press had called Captain Calamity, and the back cabins were filling up with water, and a helicopter came and got us. So it was sort of like, well, we shouldn't have done that. The second one, there was a lot of ambiguity in the decision to get on or off. My teammate was getting collected because she was struggling a little bit to adjust, which is her story. And while we were waiting for the boat to come and get her, I had to wrestle with the decision about whether to go on or by myself and row the Atlantic solo, or whether to get off when she got off. And it wasn't clear to me whether or not I was making the correct decision by getting off, because it would be reckless to go on because we were having some issues with the battery, or whether I was chickening out. And the gray area, like, it's so much if the boat had been sinking, it probably wouldn't have been felt as bad as if like I sort of voluntarily made it. And I just, whether or not this is true, I came to the decision, the realization, or the opinion that I chickened out, and that gutted me. It like sent me in a big spiral, because I had this idea of myself, and I was going to go on to be a great adventurer, and here I was electing to get off. And the second failed one in a few years, and the Northwest Passage was never going to happen. And it completely rocked my like idea of who I was, and I just felt worthless. Not like I was a worthless adventurer, but just so much of my self-worth had become caught up in this idea. But now that I wasn't, I was just full stop worthless, and just overthinking a lot of conversations. Oh, did I speak too much? Am I still funny? Are my friends sick of me? Because I couldn't even imagine my friends seeing worth in me. Of course, even at the time, if I opened my mouth and said my friends think I'm worthless, I knew that was not true. But something, I used to describe it as like a lead ball in my gut, just sort of like sitting there the whole time, like, ugh. So it wasn't like I was clinically depressed. I was having fun, going around my normal day, but just like in the background, just sort of feeling a bit wayward, lost. I'd lost a fire to do things that I had before. I wanted to do adventures, but I couldn't be bothered. So I was like, I want to get the desire back. It wasn't even that I wanted to do a specific adventure. I just wanted to do an adventure. So all of those things happened after that second failure.
Where do you think that this appetite for adventure comes from? Is it something that you got from your family? Is it something that you own yourself? Is there a moment, let's say, in your early stages of life, that you realize adventure is what I want to pursue in my life, just I don't know in what shape and form?
Well, I mean, there's like so many different seeds that have been planted. It's difficult to point at a specific one. And also, like, who knows what I'm retrospectively putting on. But some of the obvious ones are like, my dad was a proper explorer. He mapped part of South America, led expeditions in the 60s to Greenland. My mum was even more influential in that sense, because she was an adventurer in a different way, traveling overland all the way from Australia back through Southeast Asia and the Middle East and Europe to that's the UK in the 70s. And she was more like, would say stuff like, what are you going to tell your grandkids? Like, you've got to have interesting stories. You've got to, like, sending us off from a very young age, me and all my sisters would be packed off at summer holidays to go and do like, building schools or painting schools or in Africa, which I know we're like in the context of those sort of gap year companies that have safety rails, but when you're 15 or something, it still feels like a big deal. And then, so they were feeding it. Simultaneously, rugby was my thing. I love rugby. I still love rugby, and I played it all my life. And I sometimes think that what I'm replacing is what the most important aspects of adventure to me is the camaraderie. It's fully committing. Your body is on the line. You're pushing yourself all the time for your teammates. And you can say that sentence, whether you're talking about kayaking for 40 miles, 10 days in a row, or whether you're talking about putting your head into a ruck in a rugby game, so that camaraderie is important. My friend after university, he sent me a video of people rowing the Atlantic and said, let's do this. And we said, yes. So that's definitely like a specific catalyst moment. But also, I don't think I can overlook the sort of crushing existential crisis where I entered the office after university and just thought, this cannot be it. I got to do something, because this is terrible. And it's going to be the next 40 or 50 years. I just cannot bear that thought. So that was a driver, sort of a negative driver as well. So all of these things came together. And then I was living in Hong Kong, where the access to the outdoors is immense. So started hiking, camping, kayaking, rowing, coastal rowing, more and more. So it became, rather than just like wanting to do, this is a great saying from, I think, Al Humphreys, another adventurer, rather than wanting to have an adventure of a lifetime, I wanted to have a lifetime of adventure. So, I was constantly, it just became more and more part of my life, rather than just like, oh, I'd love to one day in the future, grow across the Atlantic. It's just like, I just do this all the time. So all of those things happened, coalesced into this eventual trip to the Arctic.
Yeah. So adventures, they are made of beautiful moments, but also of some hostility, adversity, challenges. It's not a simple journey. There are different elements that constitute the adventure itself. One is perhaps facing death. And that's, I would say, something that you somehow encounter when you are at sea and sometimes without direction. Was there any moment that you felt that this is it, and how would you describe that situation?
Well, firstly, when you're listing all of the aspects that make up adventure, beautiful moments, but also adversity. If you have a proper, healthy approach to adventure, then it's difficult to differentiate between adversity and the beautiful moments. Because, I mean, if you wanted beautiful moments, you could go and look at a sunrise in Spain and have a glass of wine. It's like, what is the point of adventure? The point is it's challenging. And like the best days were the ones where objectively it was the worst. And we'd get to the end of like an 18-hour paddle coming through ice and just think that was epic. You said I'm a motivational speaker, and part of my thing is trying to get people to reframe challenges, not as an obstacle between where themselves and where they want to be, but actually something to get excited about. Like, tough things are tough. That's not the problem. That's the point. So yeah, the best days were the worst days. And in particular, we had this one day, we were crossing a place called Prince Regent Inlet, 50 miles wide, the crux of the expedition. And it took us almost 10 hours to cross, and we're just a couple of miles from shore. And suddenly all this ice just comes in and starts flowing all around us and moving and spilling over itself like a river. And we were just trapped 2 or 3 miles from shore, but it took us another 7 hours to get that last mile. And during that time, these 2 huge bits of ice just collided with Eileen and I in the middle and slammed into our kayak. Instead of crushing us, it pinched the bottom of the kayak and lifted us up into the air. And we had to grab onto the ice, pull ourselves forward, and slip back into the water. Now, Jeff and West and their kayak had been hit too. So the nose of their kayak had been pushed up onto the ice. And so West was in the front, actually out of the water, but Jeff's in the back, and the boat's being slowly rotated. He's being like lowered into his icy death. And he's very chilled out Texan man. As he goes into his icy demise, he says, "Oh, yo, Mark, I'm going to need your help over here real quick." So I jumped out of the kayak onto the ice, pulled mine and Eileen's kayak up, then grabbed onto Wes and Jess, pulled theirs out of the water too. We floated on that piece of ice for, I don't know how long. It could have been only 10 minutes or could have been 2 hours. Just for some reason, I can't process that length of time. It seemed to just blend in my mind. But we eventually launched again, and we had to weave and dodge through the ice. And after 17 hours, we made it to shore. And just as we were about to arrive there, we see a polar bear and its 2 cubs. Oh, God. So we have to go for another hour. We set up a tent, and we do the only sensible thing we can, and we have a cup of tea. And this is supposed to be the hard bit over, but now there's more ice coming in. It looks like it's going to get harder and harder and harder. And that day, 18 hours, almost dying, having to go in so many times, mentally preparing to land, and then having to go for another hour. By far the greatest day. All of us think, in the end, I remember Wes being interviewed by a local newspaper when we finished, and he came back from the interview while we were still in the Arctic, over a hot chocolate, and was like, he asked me what the best day was. What do you think I said? And we were all like, Prince Regent Inlet. What a day. So it's difficult to say, what are the worst days and what are the best days, because they're the same. But there was one moment where we were entering a place called Bellet Strait, and all this ice started rushing towards us because the tide had picked it up and was throwing it at us. And the tide team had just got the shore team texting us times when things like tide and weather, they just got it completely wrong, literally 180 degrees wrong. It should have been going away from us. It's coming towards us. And that was we have 2 minutes to get to shore now. Otherwise, everything's over. And that was the only time I really, in the moment, just pictured myself floating away and thought, what am I going to think in a couple of minutes as I float away? I'm going to think about my daughter. And to give myself any additional percentage, I thought I'd be so angry if I float away and I feel like my shoulders are not on fire, like I still had an extra ounce of power to give to get me short. So I started screaming my daughter's name in their head, Naomi, 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 to try and get to shore. And we did. And that was the only day where it wasn't fun and challenging and part of being in nature, because it just felt like a human error, giving the time wrong, and all of us were livid. We got over it very quickly, because you just do. And within half an hour, we were talking about university experiences and comparing being at university in Texas to the UK and all those sort of things. But for that brief moment, it was like, this is it. You got to find something to get out of here because you're a dad and this isn't okay.
Yeah. You mentioned hot chocolate, tea, and while I was preparing this interview, I was thinking, how do you go about eating and having a cup of tea during that journey? Was there any plan on where you could stop and have some food, or it would just happen when you would have a chance?
Yeah, we'd stop every night. We were kayaking along shore, so each night we'd set up a tent, and sometimes that was a 5-hour day, and sometimes that was an 18-hour day. And when the night returned and it imposed a structure on us, it was generally about 9 hours of kayaking. We sat up at 7, land by 5, and then we'd cook meal in the morning and the afternoon, and we'd have like powdered fuel throughout the day, like Huel, which is like a meal replacement. And the meals that we'd have, boiling water poured into dehydrated meals, and they'd return into things like curries and mac and cheese. Was generally very nice. And Eileen and I definitely had a lot more food than Jeff and West, to the extent that they even had to carry some of our food, which was one of the points of friction, which I would understand. I have a lot of sympathy for them carrying that extra food for us. And what I didn't realize at the time is Jeff had 2 hernias. So I can understand why he was particularly pissed off with. I didn't find out he had hernias till maybe a year later. So Eileen and I had a lot of food. I need a lot of food to compare to most people. It seems I just crash without it. But equally, maybe we overstocked. Who knows? Because we definitely finished almost to the day all of our hot meals, but we had a lot more like powdered meals to go. And one more question within that. Halfway, there's a place called Cambridge Bay, and that was our only stop into civilization where we restocked with food that we'd sent in ahead in a plane.
Yeah. In terms of those moments where you are thinking, I don't know if I can keep going, where I'm going to find strength, does it still make sense? What was the fuel? You think the fuel was confidence, stubbornness, hope, or something else?
I never thought I can't keep going, except for one day where I really the speed plummeted from 4 miles an hour to 2 miles an hour, and I couldn't muster anymore. But it was just because I was very, very hungry and I hadn't eaten enough that morning, and I knew I just needed to get to the end of the day and eat. But like, I never thought I could. I never thought, with the exception of that one hunger day. And there was maybe the last crossing. There was the weather was getting too bad to do the crossing, and we were wondering whether or not we'd ever get a chance to launch. And that really felt like we messed up because we missed a weather window. We tried to be really hyper safe by not taking a borderline weather window, and then we missed any weather window. But in terms of like my own ability to keep going, or why am I doing this? Can I keep going? I never wondered that. I knew why I was there. And I knew I could keep going forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And that is because I had worked on that, like not just from a fitness point of view, but mentally. I had put myself in extremely reckless, stressful situations so that I knew that I could continue to draw from the well and go forever. And in terms of why, after the second Atlantic failure, I started reaching out to psychologists so I could really understand my own like personal motivations. And the reason I felt probably so bad after failing is because my metric of success had become completely linked up with the idea of becoming a world record setting adventurer, which is just ludicrous. Like only enjoying it because you set a world record or not. It's completely binary. And it's not really what adventure is about, because adventure isn't really defined by the last 2 minutes. It's defined by like the whole thing. So I really explored what it was I wanted. And I came down to 3 things: performance, discovery, and relationships, which is based on some work about narratives that sports people tell themselves by Katrina Douglas and David Carlis, I think, the psychologist, which I've now articulated as the challenge, the experience, and the camaraderie are my 3 motivations. And those things mean I can always judge it on my own terms. Like if there's a headwind and suddenly our 40-mile day becomes a 20-mile day because it's going slowly, it no longer is frustrating because I can't reach our 40-mile destination. It's not about the objective distance. It's about the challenge. Well, the headwinds are making it more challenging. So now I can say I'm challenging myself. I want the experience of being immersed in nature, and now the wind is blowing in my face. I want the camaraderie. And camaraderie is not like friendship. Camaraderie is formed when tough times are shared. And today just got a lot tougher. So suddenly I know why I'm here, and I can reframe this headwind, not as an obstacle between me and where I want to go, but as exactly the reason I'm there, the challenge, experience, the relationships. So in those moments, there's no like, whoa, damn it, there's another headwind. We're going slower. We're never going to finish this day. Every single day. If we covered 40 miles, great. We're excited because we've all covered 40 miles. And if we're not covering 40 miles, it's the challenge, experience, and the relationships. And that's what drives me. So yeah, I never had any like, you know, I had doubts that there might be external factors that mean we can't make it, like ice or wind. But I never thought, oh, where am I going to get the energy for tomorrow from? I thought, you know, and even the day there was a crossing from a place called Royal Geographical Islands to Victoria Island. And that day I was close to tears because I was trying so hard. I was sustaining an effort level, which would be like going out to run your personal best over 1 kilometer and then just keep on going for another 8 hours. And I just couldn't believe every time I took a stroke, I thought, I won't be able to lift my arms again. And I'd do another one. And then every day from that day onwards, even that didn't make me think, Jesus, how am I going to go tomorrow? Because today was so hard. How the hell am I going to do it tomorrow? Because I've got another ultra marathon tomorrow and another ultra marathon the next day and another. Instead, I thought, if I could do that, I could do tomorrow. If I can do the next day. So even the times where, you know, it felt like I was physically at the limit, they only empowered me to make me think I have no limit, rather than making me think the limit is here. And that again required work and like reframing and practice in the training to like self-talk and put yourself in those situations. Resilience is abstract. You're only sort of as resilient as you think you are. And if you think you're resilient, then you are. And if resilience is a choice, not a trait. So if you continue to make resilient choices, then you are resilient. But you just got to practice making those choices. So in training, I did a lot of stuff, specifically practicing in my head. Like if I'm tired now, I can imagine what I can do when I'm rested. Like if I manage that, imagine what I can do tomorrow. And that kind of positive self-talk becomes a habit and becomes a self-belief, which, so yeah, of course there were hard days where in the specific, like next 5 minutes, I might think I'm dead, but I never like really had like that existential, like the trip is over. How can I, you know, there's no, I'm done. And now I've got to have some kind of miracle because I've done such crazy stuff before. But, you know, if I had done it 3 years before or 4 years before, I probably would have called for a rescue on the first night, but I just worked, you know, I worked on my resilience. So I got to a level where I could survive. And then I got to a level where I actually enjoyed it. You know, I got tough enough to deal with the discomfort. And then I got articulate enough to know why I was doing it.
Yep.
So I could say, this is fun. Not just I'm tough, but this is fun. And it was
it makes a difference for sure. Yeah.
My best holiday is everybody else's worst nightmare, basically. But
I want to explore your preparation. I didn't have this in mind, but now that you mentioned, I would like you to expand with a couple of exercises. Like what sorts of stressful situations did you put yourself voluntarily in to be properly prepared for that excursion? Is it something from daily life that people like myself can relate to?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was it was stuff like in the first ocean rowing attempts, I was really fit, much fitter in like I'd go to the gym and I'd do these amazing times on the rowing machine and I'd get very strong. But there was no element of uncertainty. It was all about the heart rate, not about your head. So in the next ones, although I probably could have kept my heart rate higher if I'd stayed in the gym, I elected to go outside and do stuff where there was like a degree of uncertainty. So one of the most specific things I did, I took a rowing boat out and I went backwards and forwards over a 4-kilometer strip in the dark by myself from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. For 12 hours. And the stress that was there were several. One, it was boring, 4K back and forward. So there's no experience of nature that I can draw on. It's in the dark, so there's no view. I'm by myself, so there's no relationships. And the challenge aspect, it was 12 hours. So it didn't matter how fast I went. The finish line didn't go any closer. If I said, let's do 100K, and I said, okay, if I just push myself a little bit, then I'll finish in 8 hours instead of 9. It was 12 hours. So whether I push myself or not, that's how long I was going to be there. So I was practicing like challenging myself without the external reward of trying to get closer to a finish line. So all of those stresses come into the Northwest Passage when that ice is changing the finish line. We think it's 1 hour away and suddenly it's 7 hours away. It means I can keep accessing and digging into my mental reserves without the promise of being like, oh, if I just go a little bit harder, we'll be over in half an hour. You know, it could be half an hour, it could be another 12 hours. I just got to keep going until the end is there. I've got to be done when I'm done, not when I'm done when I want to be. So trying to like recreate that stress where, you know, in life, we always create finish lines. And, you know, you see marathon runners cross the finish line and collapse. Have they paced themselves so perfectly that they have no energy left in the moment they cross the finish line? If somebody had accidentally put the finish line 200 meters up the road, would they fall down 200 meters short? Or would they still be able to keep going for another 200 meters? Like the thing there is not their physical energy, it's their mental state waiting for a finish line. So I've trained myself to be able to go without a finish line and be able to pick myself up each time the finish line moves. Equally, I just go out by myself on the wrong side of islands in Hong Kong where there's a lot of swell and you know, you just have to just concentrate really hard for a long time to not fall over. And that concentration, you know, like we all know that if you sprint, eventually you'll slow down. Well, if you're like sprinting in your mind, like with full concentration, eventually you'll like run out of that resource. So just like any other fitness, I had to practice that focus for a very long period of time. So after when it really counted, I wouldn't be like technique going or safety going. Yeah, and I'd say that in life, if you want to recreate this, is how do you recreate that mental fatigue that you'll get when it counts? Because you can go out and push yourself physically or mentally, but it's very difficult to get to that level. I'd say do the hard thing at the end of the week after work on a Friday. If you want to get your heart rate, or whatever your metaphor for heart rate is, if you're trying to learn how to concentrate for longer or be calm under stress or whatever, you'd be better off going to sleep, waking up early, having a hearty breakfast, and then doing your exercise. You'd get a better physical response. But what if you go out at 8 p.m. on a Friday when all you want to do is go home and watch Netflix and go to bed? So your mind is already drained from a long week of work. Yeah. You've used the finite source of your concentration. You've spent the currency of your decisions at work, and now you have to do it again. So you recreate that tiredness. And each time you do that, you expand your capacity of your mind so that when you're under immense stress, in my case, in the adventures, I know my body and my mind are used to doing that, not just when I'm sweating, but when I already can't be bothered. And that's something I learned from the ultra running community in Hong Kong. They would say, I could wake up at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning and crush my PB, but I'm going out at 9 p.m. tonight because I'm already knackered mentally. And when they do 100K or 200K or whatever, and it's like 24 hours out of 25, they know that they can focus on their foot placement, on their technique, on that like concentration that it requires to keep their cadence up. And I try to take that and apply it to my thing, and I'm sure it's applicable to all sorts of things in life.
I put a poll on YouTube asking people what is tougher for the viewers. There are 4 options: admitting fear, dealing with failure, asking for help, or staying motivated. At the moment, the two that are more popular are dealing with failure and staying motivated. Let's see. Let's see the results. I will keep people posted, but make sure to vote because I think it will be interesting to analyze the results.
For sure. Well, I can give my 2 cents now. Staying motivated is easier when you know your why, and your why has to be intrinsic.
Yes.
Challenge, experience, relationships are intrinsic. If I failed in the Northwest Passage 100 meters short, 50 miles short, 1,000 miles short, and I said, did I challenge myself? Did I have an experience in nature? Did I build relationships with my teammates? And if the answer to those are yes, I can say that's a success. And that brings a contentment and a happiness, which is far more powerful than just saying, did I cross the finish line? But equally gives me a much more powerful motivation because I'm doing it for something in here. And that is backed up by countless studies that show the power of extrinsic motivations always wears out over time. But the power of intrinsic motivations is far more powerful. And I do it even in my cold call. I'm a motivational speaker. I call companies. I say, hey, look, I see you having an event in next month. And if my only goal was each cold call has got to lead into more clients and more money, that's an extrinsic goal. And as we all know, most cold calls fail and I'd get burnt out and I'd lose motivation. I'd say, what's the point of doing cold calls? Maybe I should just try messaging people on LinkedIn. But I say, my intrinsic motivation is to challenge myself. And I hate doing cold calls. So every time I pick up the phone, I'm challenging myself. Every time I mess up a pitch, can I, you got an event, I'm learning and I'm facilitating that challenge. And that means I'm going to pick up the phone every time because I say, right, I'm challenging myself. I'm here to learn new skills about sales and I'm here to step out my comfort zone. I'm here to grow as a business person. And that's the challenge. And therefore I can judge it on my own terms. All day, an entire day of phone calls could be hung up on me, but I'd say I'd challenge myself. And of course I'm going to go tomorrow because I want to challenge myself. But if the only thing I wanted was more clients, I'd probably give up at the end of that day. So intrinsic motivations are so much more powerful. There's studies that show language students who have motivations like I want to try something new to challenge myself, or I want to be immersed in the culture of the nation by learning the language, or I want to speak my spouse's first language. They're all more likely to get A's than people who say, I want to learn a language because I want to get an A or it will look good on my CV. When the chips are down and you're struggling to motivate, intrinsic motivations are always, always, always more powerful than extrinsic ones.
Yeah. There's actually a Nietzsche sentence that I think really relates what you are saying. I think it's one of the most beautiful Nietzsche phrases. I'm surprised.
Is it when you know your why, anyhow you can bear anyhow?
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
He said it better than me. It took me 15 minutes of ranting.
The man was here in the 19th century, so he was ahead of you. There's not much you can do.
Yeah, everything that's been said or thought has already been said or thought. It's very difficult to come up with original stuff. What I say is the joy of striving is better than arriving. But if you love to strive, then you always arrive. That's my quote.
That's a beautiful one as well. Yeah. I've started exercising. I mean, I exercise for maybe like 20 years now, or even more. But I've started exercising first thing in the morning. One of the best decisions of my life. For many reasons, but I'm not going to hijack this conversation with that. But I'm just going to name two. First, I can work out in a way that's way more effective because I'm fresh. Because I can challenge myself in a way I cannot do in the evening, which is great. And the second is once I'm done with my work, let's say at 6 p.m., because I can do whatever I want. And before I have to still go to the gym, and that will be a pain. So now I face the gym with pleasure because I go there and I start the day already satisfied because I start the day already with one thing off the desk. So I start the day motivated. Whether most people, what happened? They get off the bed and they need to get a coffee that they can get on the mood to start working. I think it makes a lot of sense to start the day in the right manner. And it doesn't need to be the gym, but something that will ignite you and boost you for the remaining, say, 10 hours. Just find that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the comparison between the first two attempts and the one that was successful. Was there anything that went wrong on the first two that you just amended when you got it right, and that was, let's say, key for the success?
I mean, it's difficult in some ways on the technical side because the ocean rowing is so different from kayaking. But the fundamental difference was, and this isn't a disparity, particularly on my first attempt, it was the captain. So the rest of the team are great, and I'm on a WhatsApp group with them still. And a couple of them went on to row the Atlantic in different boats. So, not them, but broadly, the captain and then other people. The difference was my teammates. West Hansen, Jeff Wooston, we always pronounce his name wrong, Woost, and Eileen Visser are, of course, we had tension and fights and disagreements. And I'd say Eileen and I and Jeff and West probably had, Eileen and I as a pair, had a fundamentally different approach. But when it was all said and done, each of us shared an iron will to get that thing done. And nobody ever thought about quitting. We came up with scenarios. What happens if we run out of food here? What if we run out of food there? But, there was, and that sort of task cohesion was fundamental. Like, people think that camaraderie is about everybody being friends. And of course, there's that element to it. But like in this scenario where there's a specific goal, that friendship will break down pretty quickly if somebody is undermining the task cohesion. So like you need to know that everybody's on board with the goal, and then the social stuff is built on top. But if you're great at telling anecdotes and such a funny guy and yada yada, but you're not pulling your weight, then the social stuff becomes a grind. So and who knows, maybe they all hate me because I was certainly the slowest kayaker. I was the least experienced, and everybody was very patient with me, and I had to be continuously humble and willing to listen to their advice to get quicker. So it's difficult to know their opinion on it. But from my point of view, it was the team of experts. They took me under their wing, and the last minute changing teams to them, it was a huge risk for them to take me on board. So that was the difference. And as I say, one of my fundamental goals was camaraderie. And there was like moments where I was frustrated and I just wish we were doing stuff differently. And I'm sure they were frustrated and not telling me and whatnot, but just love them. I love them. And particularly Eileen, we shared a boat. So like, it was a physical metaphor. Like every tense of the muscle, we were driving ourselves forward together. And Eileen is just a very, very tough person who just deserves a lot of credit. And I say in my book, she, for me, transformed the expedition from good to great.
Wow, that's a compliment.
Yeah.
What you are saying now relates to one of my friends' comments when it comes to his day-to-day works. Now he's a sailor, just to give you some context. So he gets on boats, private boats, and he travels the boat, say, from one Caribbean island to another, or sometimes even crossing the Atlantic. And it's not only himself, so he has a team. And he told me once that, okay, they need to understand that they're going to be together for, 10, 20 days, sometimes longer. And they need to get along. But they also need to understand when is the time to be quiet. And sometimes people are on the mood to, let's say, to party, or just to chit-chat. And sometimes people are on the mood to just be with themselves. And you need to learn along the way what moment is now. Are they ready to socialize, or they rather be by themselves? And in that situation, because you are in a closed circumstance, there is not much room to I go to another room or I go for a walk. You need to be together and understand each other just by reading some signs. Do you think that also helped you to succeed in that journey, that you guys could read each other without much challenge after a while?
I mean, that probably would have helped. I'm not sure we ever got to that stage. There was nowhere to go. We were just in like a 4-person tent, and yeah, you could go outside for a little bit, but it was cold and much more pleasant in the tent. It sounds like your friend has a lot of good team cohesion and camaraderie and social cohesion, and a lot of emotionally intelligent people. For me, the secret is just not taking anything personally. Like, even if it's meant personally, I just sort of assume it isn't. I just say, oh, well, he's tired. Oh, well, he's tired. And like, I can just like get over it and move on. And not all conflicts have to be resolved in the moment. When somebody says something and you want to respond, you can just be like, whatever, man. And then like 2 hours later, say like, hey, I heard what you said earlier, and I was the peacemaker for the trip. I think everybody would admit that, and I did a lot of validating, and I wonder if I should have done some more challenging. You say, I think everybody heard when I said, I know that's tough. It must be tough. I hear what you're saying. I know that's tough. I wonder if they heard, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're right. And then like in the book, which I end up saying everybody's great, but I talk about some of the conflicts, and I worry if it was a surprise to them when I thought he was on my side, where I was really on nobody's side. I was just trying to validate people. So yeah, I mean, for me, reflecting on like what I can do better next time is finding a constructive way to say, I know you're right. I know this is tough, but have you considered it from their point of view, or even, I think you're being immature or whatever, but not that I think anybody was being immature, but yeah, I think that's how I could affect a group better. So yeah, I mean, for sure, in a perfectly perfect group, people would be, very cognizant of each other's needs and quiet when they need to be quiet and loud when they need to be loud. But I'm not sure if we got there.
Yeah, I think it's crucial not to take things personally, as you just said. I think that's a great advice, and most people don't realize that when others have an issue with you, often they have an issue with themselves. They are just using you as an excuse. Like when you see a lot of people who they are angry all the time, they are not really having some friction with you. It's more about something that they are going through and it's not resolved, and they need to somehow outsource to the next person. So yeah, I think we should all take that in mind. Going back to the journey itself, was there anything that really surprised you along Dubai from a mental or physical perspective?
That's a good question. Was I surprised at all? Well, I'm surprised how long it took. It's supposed to take 60 days. It took us 103, and everybody said you can't be there in September or October, and we were there in the middle of October. Like nothing was surprising in terms of like my mental ability to deal with it, because I so specifically prepared for it. So, like lifting a deadlift in the gym, you can't lift 200 kilograms tomorrow. You start with 50, then you do 55, then you do 60. So in training, I'd made sure that I'd got up to 195. So when I did 200 in the Northwest Passage, I wasn't like completely out of my depth. I'm probably surprised by how many polar bears we saw. I mean, like everybody says they're endangered, but we in the first half we saw 20, I don't know, maybe some were maybe 15 encounters, and some of them had cubs and 2 cubs. And I need to count how many we saw. Somewhere between 10 and 20 encounters with a bunch of cubs as well. And I'm talking within 1 or 2 meters of us, like coming out of a tent and finding a polar bear there on the first night that we camped. So yeah, a lot of bears, and they were fantastic. That was really, really fantastic. I mean, they make up my motivational talk is called "Find Your Polar Bear," because they were such a fantastic.
I want to get into that in a couple of minutes. I want to use the polar bear as a metaphor to go to a few things, but first I want to I want to know more about if you celebrated when you finish, or you just wanted to rest, chill, and disconnect from from the road. How do you go about recognition and all that?
Well, I think everybody just wanted. We had a little celebration, like little drinks and pizza and stuff. But equally, I think everybody was just keen to get home, go on with their lives, not speak to each other for a while. Not that we were, just space. But yeah, we had like a profound moment for me. I don't know how the others feel about it, but I put a lot, because the camaraderie was my goal. I put a lot of emphasis on this like final beer, like wow, we'd finish and then we'd all have this kind of cheers, like like the end of American Pie 2, where they like catch each other's eye from across the bar and they like raise a drink and that knowing look, oh, we know. And we had a drink and it was quite underwhelming. And I was like, okay, maybe I've put too much emphasis on this moment and I'm not going to have a sort of a movie moment of camaraderie. We went home and West was like in the hotel lobby, like, I'm going to have some ice cream and hot chocolate if anybody's keen. And we were like, yeah, sure, whatever. So we all sat around a table in this very brightly lit hotel room. And West said, oh, I'm just going to play some music. I've been thinking about this song. And I said, well, what about this song? And we played a thing called The Northwest Passage by Stan Rogers. And I played a song that I'd been thinking of for a while called Caledonia, which is like, I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me, but I'm coming home now. And we all, it was some jokes, and we spoke about Prince Regent Inlet, and we also sat in silence, just listening to the music and letting the sort of shared accomplishment wash over us. And that moment that I'd expected over beers now was happening like spontaneously over ice cream. And, I was actually having to look down and stop myself from crying, because the contentment, I just loved those people, the three people around me. And I wanted to, everything I wanted, I got. And that was a profound moment. But then, I came back and I had a party in on the return, and that again, it wasn't like, it was nice to see everybody, but I don't know what I was expecting. But and then you just sort of get on with it. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to turn it into a motivational speaking career, and I knew the sacrifices that everybody had made for me to go there, so I sort of owe it back to them. So I came back with a lot of like internal pressure to become a successful speaker off the back of it. And so I was like sort of nose to the grind immediately. There was no like grace period. And my second child arrived maybe 8 weeks after we got back. So it was that as well.
That's also life-changing.
Yeah.
What's your motivation to be a motivational speaker?
I just love the sound of my own voice. No, I do. I love storytelling. And, as I get to understand motivational speaking a bit more in the industry, you've got to have sort of a few memorable one-line quotes. Like I said before, the joy of striving is better than arriving. When you love to strive, you always arrive. Things like that the corporates can take away. But before it was that, it was just pure storytelling. I still, if anybody lives in London and has a kid, I give free state school talks. And those feel the best, because I have a slightly simplified version of resilience for them. But it really is just hearing a story for them. Like, they don't need corporate takeaways. They just benefit from hearing a story of a man trying something and failing and then succeeding, and it's exciting, and maybe somebody will go on to do something else, or maybe not. And that's the best one, because I'm like, this is what I love to do. Just go and tell an exciting story. And the kids are mouths open while I say the polar bear was outside of our tent. And yeah, I've always loved to tell stories. My friends will say I exaggerate them, and I tell the same one on repeat. And now I just get paid to exaggerate and tell the same one on repeat. So that's basically it. So it's really about storytelling. I love it. If I didn't do this, I'd try and be a stand-up comedian or something. I'd find a way of just being a professional storyteller.
Yeah. As you said, like, if it's something that we're very keen to pursue, then it always makes sense. Especially in this day and age where I think that market of comedians, life coach, and motivational speakers, it's saturated. So you really need to have a profile that that will help you to stand out. Otherwise, you'll be just one more. So how do you go about differentiating yourself from the crowd? Is there just being yourself, or is there any specific trick?
Well, I thought that like being a record-setting adventurer and stuff would be a differentiator, but it's less about what I am. It's more about what problem I'm solving. So, I used to say you can hire a world record-setting adventurer and hear stories of polar bears, and I'm so unique, and you're going to hear about how unique I am. Now I say I build teams. I build resilient teams that view change and growth as an exciting challenge, not just an obstacle to get through. There's nothing about me in there. It's not like, oh, I want to hear from European Adventurer of the Year. It's I'm a company that's going through change and growth, and I want my team to, I'd love them to view this as a challenge and not an obstacle. So it's about actually moving away from you, but then equally, how do you do that in a way that doesn't just get lost in a sea of corporate jargon of people saying, thrive in adversity, don't just survive, thrive, thrive through change, view change as a challenge, so find your polar bear is the title, and that immediately, I hope, that is a differentiator. And because it's like a title, like a specific product, people can say, oh, you're the polar bear guy, you're the polar bear guy. And because I have a few specific takeaways, they'll remember in the morning, love to strive, you always arrive. So those are the kind of things like that make you memorable, referable, rebookable, rather than like emphasizing too much on yourself. Yeah, so it's a constant balance because I work with two coaches called from Main Stage, and the coaches they don't teach me public speaking. They teach me like market positioning, and it's a constant balance between them being like, what problem are you solving here? You need to be problem solving. So I say, well, my problem I'm solving is now I reframe growth and change as an exciting challenge, and they say, okay, well, why are you different from other people? So I go, okay, well, when your polar bear comes into your tent, will you view it as a change or challenge? And they go, well, what problem are you solving now? And then so I go back and they say, well, what are you different about? So like, I need their help a great deal, and I'm getting there. So that's the big change. You're making it about my clients and not about me. But then with remaining unique and exciting. I mean, the big thing is having a quality video. Like it just. I film all of my talks, but then I got one big client in Germany who is filming it professionally, and they let me have the footage, and I use that footage. I cut it up into a show reel, and it looks very professional. And that has probably been the biggest change in my career. It's just the first thing anybody's going to do when they try and book a motivational speaker is look at their show reel, and if it looks like a £10,000 speaker, then they'll pay you £10,000. And if you look like a 500 quid speaker, they'll pay you 500 quid. Even if you say,
100%.
like it's just all about the video, the materials. So those are it's crazy because it's just such like a business like anything else. There's conferences for speakers, there's coaches for speakers, there's people whose whole job is pay me to make your speaker profile on LinkedIn more bookable. That like anything, there's a whole industry around it. So it's crazy.
Yeah. What you are saying, it really resonates with me as a creator, because we tend to think, guys like us, that content it's everything, and it's not. Of course, content matters. It matters more than we like to think. But end of the day, if you don't have a proper sales and marketing plan, you can be very good. You can excel in your content creation, in your speeches, but you need that team that will help you reach the right crowd. Otherwise, you'll be stuck at home.
Yeah.
But let me go back to the polar bear. I would like to understand, how did that idea come to stage? Was there a moment? Can you remember the exact polar bear that told you that idea, or was it something that formed over time?
It's definitely something that formed over time. So the idea is, it's the conclusion of my speech, and part of it is just because it's a good, memorable way of concluding the speech. But I'm teaching the audience. I go through, and each time I come across a new obstacle, I say, well, actually, this is the challenge, and the challenge is the point. And this is a beautiful experience. The experience is the point. This is a chance to build relationships. The relationships is the point. And if you have a challenge and experience and relationship focus rather than outcome focus, then you're going to be happier, hardier, and more likely to succeed. That's maybe too wordy. So essentially, if you can, for me, coming face to face with polar bears really encapsulates the challenge, the experience, and the relationships. So I no longer ask myself, what's my next world record? To remind myself that it's those intrinsic experiences that count, I ask myself, what's my next polar bear? And if you can find out what it is that really encapsulates the challenge, experience, and the relationships for you, something specific, then you'll be happier and hardier and more likely to succeed. So what's your polar bear? And that's the idea. Like if you can, if you can come up with something that really encapsulates those three things, it becomes easier and easier when you're pushing along to say, like, this is my polar bear, this is the challenge, this is the experience, this is the relationships. So that's where it comes from. And in the talk, the specific polar bear that is one that woke us up with a very, very deep right next to our heads. We opened the tent and it just wouldn't leave. And we went out there and we threw stones at it and it just stayed there for about 10 minutes. Obviously on stage, that's a good 10-minute story of hilarity. And Eileen West is filming himself and I'm throwing stones and having a bit of a panic about it. And Jeff's trying to cock the rifle, but it's rusted shut. And Eileen, who's grown up with grizzly bears in Alaska, is sort of going backwards and forwards in and out the tent past the bear to get out. So it's just a comic scene, really a very memorable bear. That's where the find your polar bear idea comes from for me.
And why every man and woman needs a polar bear in their lives?
Well, you need to you need something, whatever it is, to remind you of the intrinsic motivations. People think that happiness is easy, pleasurable. I'm trying to think of the word, the seeking of pleasure and having drinks and having parties. And I'm sure everybody's having fun in the moment. And I also go to the pub and I have fun. But, it's not like you have fun and then you go to the pub again and you have fun. And then you go on holiday and you have fun. And you just sort of accumulate joy and get more and more joyful. You actually end up only joyful during the moment. And then you have to get to a next one. You have to go on another holiday I can't wait to my next holiday. How do you find of happiness that isn't a place or an external thing you do? How do you find happiness that is a state? And that comes from the sense of challenging yourself and focusing on an intrinsic drive and a sense of mastery and a sense of control and a sense of accomplishment and a shared sense of community and an appreciation for the awesome experiences you're having along the way. Those things will bring you if you feel fulfilled and content and accomplished and a sense of mastery and deep, meaningful relationships, happiness will just come as a byproduct. So hunt for those things, not for happiness. Another saying that isn't mine, which I heard, was it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness of the pursuit. And if you can find happiness in the pursuit, then you will have a lasting contentment, which is far more profound than that sort of just fleeting joy, which is based on trying to do stuff you enjoy to sustain it. And so what is it that really encapsulates that for you? For me, it is everything the polar bear stood for: challenging ourselves in the mayhem of coming face to face with the polar bear, trying to stay calm, the experience of seeing that beautiful animal face to face, the relationships I form with my teammates because we can laugh at ourselves and each other for that unbelievable encounter. And next time, rather than saying, even if I want to set another world record, rather than saying, what's my next world record? I'll say, on this trip, what is the thing? Maybe, what is the polar bear? What is the thing that's really going to draw out the challenge and the experience of the relationships? So just search for fulfillment and happiness will come. If you search for happiness, it will be as fleeting as any other emotion.
Yeah, and I would say that form of happiness. It's very short. You can enjoy it for a day, for a week, for a month, maybe for a year if you are lucky. If you are lucky, but at some point will fade away. I was talking to a friend the other day, and this guy is uncertain about where he should settle. So he tried different countries, and at some point he's just tired. So I think the issue is he is just pursuing the positive things and he is not taking consideration the negative ones. And I came to the conclusion that we are happy when we are aware of the negative ones, and the negative ones don't bother as much as they usually do. So you should, like, when you are evaluating a situation, where there is a, let's say, place to live, even the woman that you're going to spend your life with, you shouldn't not you shouldn't you should look at two angles. Of course, you should take in consideration the things that you are happy with, but even the things, let's say, the downsides. So how would you be able to integrate those downsides in your life? And if you are able to integrate those downsides, maybe it's a route you should pursue. So
Yeah.
I think people should look at both angles, no, because otherwise it's always easy and not that realistic, I would say.
Not realistic, but it's also easy isn't fulfilling. We all know, like on one level or another, that you get some sense of satisfaction and contentment and a lot of other negative, positive emotions from doing something hard that you can't get from doing something easy. So, tough things are tough. That's not the problem. That's the point. But yeah, for sure. And in terms of, can you sit with negative emotions? Sitting with discomfort is fundamental as well. I read a good metaphor in the book *Sapiens*, which is a very popular book if anyone's read it, about emotions are like standing waist deep in water and trying to catch the good waves and repel the bad waves, when all the waves, whatever you do, are going to wash over you and eventually spill up the beach and disappear. Can you sit down on the sand and happily let those emotions come and go, negative and positive, and find something that's more steady than the waves? Because happiness is just like any other wave. It will come and go. But contentment is profound. And that comes from a deep understanding of your own intrinsic motivations. And I'm sure there's only 3 or 4: challenge, experience, relationships, and an ulterior motive like charity, which can also bring a deep sense of satisfaction, but doesn't really fit into the adventure narrative. But we raise a lot of money for charity, but it wasn't something that was driving me on a day-to-day basis.
So it seems to me that when you pick the power bear, the whole objective is to go after it. But what if things go the other way around? What if you pick the wrong power bear and the power bear goes after you? What you should do in that specific scenario?
Just change, adapt. I mean, people think that being resilient is the same thing as being tough, but it's not. Resilience has multiple aspects, and toughness only has one, and that is the ability to keep going. And if you're too tough, if you're not tough enough, there's obviously problems because you can't keep going, and then you can't access all of the other resilient aspects that we've spoken about. But if you're too tough, then you are unable to change, and you're unable to access the community and access help because you're too tough. So I'd say be resilient. Don't be too tough. Adapt. Adaptability is one of the key parts of resilience. So if you found the wrong polar bear, well, whatever, just find another one. Just because you picked one doesn't mean you have to do it forever. I talk a lot about challenging yourself, but at the moment it's all about relationships for me. I don't have a particular drive to push myself. I have a drive to do stuff with my dad or my kids, and my cycling adventures with my dad, which are only a couple of days long. I mean, they're challenging. They're we're going up hills, but it's not like I'm at the edge of or had to train for them or anything. And so it's about relationships. So just change. Yeah, I mean, when I speak to schools and when I speak to them, my resilience message is a bit simpler, rather than about finding meaning in the pursuit and stuff. It's like, focus on what you control, let go of the rest. Use your imagination. Resilient people have to imagine different outcomes to this bad scenario rather than just the most obvious bad one. So you've got to be imaginative. Then you've got to be adaptable. So you make those imagined pathways a reality. And then you've got to have a community where people who can help you, but also people who can go along the journey with you, because it will have more meaning if you're sharing it. So if you pick the wrong polar bear, just don't be too tough. Be adaptable.
Yeah, that reminds me of an encouragement from Jocko Willink, which I'm sure you'll be a fan of. He said, "If things are not going your way, just adapt and overcome. That's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. Those 2 words can save your life. Is life not going your way? Adapt, overcome. And most times it's just a cloud passing, over your life, and sooner than later you realize that yes, you had to face it, but things will go back to the original status, and you can just you can just chill. Sometimes we think the threat is there forever, but there's no such thing. Nothing is forever, as we know, and that goes for threats and for pleasure. Everything is temporary. That's a blessing and a curse, but we should approach existence in that manner, because that's how existence is. That's how we are built, and that's what we are here for.
Yeah, totally.
I want to get to this social support, and I read that you did a drive with 2 other fellow adventurers from London to Mongolia in a 3-door Suzuki Swift. Would you like to talk to us about that?
Yeah, there's a thing, I don't know if it goes on anymore, called the Mongol Rally. So we did that in between 2nd and 3rd year at university. And it's a rally, but it's not got no route. You start in London, then you finish in Ulaanbaatar, and you can go whichever way you want. But like, while you're driving along in rural Kazakhstan, you see another car and you're like, hey, that's a rally car. And one of the only rules is it's got to be under 1.5 liters or something. So it's a 1.3 liter 3-door Suzuki Swift, age 20-year-old. We flipped it off a hill about 1,000 miles towards the end. I managed to finish in this crushed car. I still have scars all over my back. Which looked like a bear has like slashed me, but it was I don't really know what it was actually, because we're just rolling down a hill very fast, like doosh, 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 and then end up upside down in a hill, bleeding. So I don't know what had cut me, but we finished. It took us another 12 days or something in this completely totaled car in the desert. It was just a very fun adventure. I mean, like, there wasn't obviously driving every day is difficult, but it wasn't like we weren't challenging ourselves like physically. It wasn't like we were cycling there or anything. So there was opportunities to stop and drink, and it was all about the experience. And a lot of, it was probably an early experience in like trying not to take things so personally, because everybody was getting a bit fed up with each other in a 3-door Suzuki Swift. What I'm like smiling with joy at it, because I was thinking of the other 2. I'm still friend. I love those guys. Like, Coops is coming around to my house on Friday, and he's turned into a serious adventurer, like mountaineer. It's just such a ridiculous adventure. Like the back, nobody's ever asked me about this. It's never come up, so I'm just amazed. I'm now like flooded with memories. But the back seat, because it was like a 3-door Suzuki Swift, it was so small. And the first day, the guy in the back was keeping his head between the seats so he could speak the whole time. And it was really difficult. And then eventually we realized that it's just not sustainable to be part of the conversation when you're in the back, and you just couldn't hear anything. So we'd call it the cave. And we'd be like, right, it's my turn in the cave. And you'd go into the cave, and you knew for like in the next 6 hours, you just going to speak to nobody. You just read books. And we started carving like, tallies for the days we'd been in the cave at the side of the car. And like, there was a music speaker there, and I didn't hear what they said, but clearly they said, I'm sick of this CD of ABBA. So they turned it off and then just decided to sit in silence for the next 6 hours. But they'd actually only put it down to like 1, so they couldn't hear it, but it was next to my head. So for like 6 hours, I had like, you can dance, you can. And I was like, will you turn that off? Will you turn that off? And they were like, I didn't know it was on. I didn't know it was on. So like, it was just so stupid for like the whole time. Oh, it was such a fun adventure. Those guys with drinks recently. Fred now lives in New Zealand, so we don't see him as much. But It just such a spontaneous and stupid adventure. And I thought everybody else was going to be very young as well, but people were doing it at different stages of their lives, and it was funny. It was just so ridiculous, and to do it, to finish in the manner we did with that like absolutely destroyed car. I was in a neck brace and trying to get the infected cuts off my back, and the only person we could find was a vet. So I was like leaning over the bonnet of the car, and he's cutting like dead skin off my back with paper scissors. It was just fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
So I can see that you have this adrenaline strive. That's something that it's within you, and you are very keen to explore. Is there an opposite side of you that, let's say, are you able to sit or lay down by the beach or by the pool and have a good time, or are you bored after 2 minutes?
Well, I'd say I'm not adrenaline, because you're getting the highlights here of like the car crashes and the polar bears, but the majority of what I'm doing is incredibly boring. It's not like a skydive, which is over in 5 seconds. I'm kayaking in silence for 10 hours, day after day, or I'm sitting in a tent waiting for a storm to pass. For I think the longest stint we did on shore, 6 days, no phones, no adrenaline, just anxiety about whether or not the weather's going to break or not. So it's not adrenaline. It's ultra endurance. It's slow. It requires concentration. It requires being able to be bored. And when you get to that level of boredom, there's a bliss on the other side of the boredom. It's more like meditation than adrenaline. And of course, there's these moments. But even within them, like 18 hours, it's not like do-douche. So it's not an adrenaline sport. Any of the stuff I did, driving to Mongolia, you're sitting in a car 7 hours a day. And so I don't really have much time for like, I've done a bungee jump, whatever. But like people were like, we'd love to do kite surfing. I'm like, no, not really. So I'm not really an adrenaline guy. But I do relentlessly seek fulfilling experiences. And my ideal holiday would be camping, a hiking holiday. It doesn't have to be suffering. I'd like, you could be in a nice Airbnb and go hiking every day and come back and have a glass of wine in the evening. But when I go on a pool holiday, it's not that I'm bored. It's that I'm anxious that I'm wasting my time. I'm like, I come back and everybody's like, oh, I feel recharged from having to rest all week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I only have so much time. I only have so much money. And I've just done fuck all with it for 7 days voluntarily. I'd actually rather be at work, because at least I'm like doing something. So take me on a holiday where we hike every day. And, even within that context, if I am on a holiday and I've got a book, other people like to read trashy novels to turn off. I'm like, right, I'm doing nothing for a week, and I'm going to read a 3-part trilogy biography of Theodore Roosevelt's political career. Like it's got to be something to fill. And it might seem unhealthy, but I actually think that everybody would be happier if they sought fulfilling, challenging experiences that gave them a sense of mastery and control, rather than like enjoyment in itself, because they'll enjoy the holiday, then they'll go back to work and they'll start wishing for their next holiday. But I don't do that. I'm content the whole time, because and it doesn't. I sound really intense. I'm not an intense guy. People would like. I'm like the clown, class clown, and I find time with these pool holidays have changed because I now have 3 kids, and if I go on them, I find it very fulfilling. Just no work. Let's just all play all week. So we're playing in the pool, we're jumping in and out of the pool, and it's just really amazing time to bond with my children. So that's fulfilling. It doesn't have to be like an absolute sufferfest. So the pool holidays are becoming tolerable now, but only in that context. If it was like, oh, great, my parents are going to take the kids for a week, we can go and lie by a pool, I'd be like, absolutely not. But obviously everybody else wants to go on this kind of holiday, so I do have to put up with them. Yeah. So I can't sit still, but it's not a boredom thing. It's more like a crushing existential crisis that time is running out, and with every second that passes, that second belongs to death. And what are you doing with your time?
Yeah, no, I would be the same. Like I would be the odd person in the beach or at the pool, like reading Nietzsche or Schopenhauer, because at least I'm nurturing my brain.
Yeah.
And okay, I know I could utilize my time differently, but I'm spending those 5 days reading as much as I can, because let's say if I'm at home, I'm going to be distracted with the laptop, or I check more my phone. And if I leave my mobile phone in the hotel room and I can focus on reading, at least it's something I can achieve that day that I'm on the pool or at the beach. There's always like ways around, but
Yeah,
it's not always straightforward. Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
You talk about politics briefly, just to wrap up. And I don't want to get into the topic in detail, but when I was researching about you, I noticed that you are going into this Trump interest in Greenland topic, which was huge a few months ago, and you were in the region. So can you let us know a couple of things about that, because I think it
Yeah.
didn't go away.
I set up a whole website because I thought, God, this is like the topic at the moment, and I've seen it firsthand. So I try to set up a parallel website, find your polar bear or a political speaker about like firsthand, and nobody booked me. So nobody wants to.
Yes.
So the Northwest Passage, the reason that Britain in particular was interested in finding it from the time of Henry VIII onwards, Henry VIII sent a guy called John Cobalt. Elizabeth I sent somebody called Martin Frobisher, who met the Inuit, and that interaction is Canadian Thanksgiving, if anybody's interested. And then in the 19th century, Britain sent a lot of people. And the reason was because it would be a shortcut to Asia. You don't have to go around South America. You don't have to go around Cape Horn. Now, you wouldn't even have to go through Panama or the Suez, because it'd be so quick to get to Asia. But obviously, there was a lot of ice there, and everybody who went got stuck and died. But recently, the ice is disappearing. It might really be a shipping route now. And to be honest, it's only going to be a shipping route briefly, because the ice is disappearing so much, people will be able to go straight over the North Pole, which would just cut off a lot of time to Asia. But that's going to be incredibly politically sensitive. Part of the question will be, who owns it? The Northwest Passage is through the Canadian islands. Is it an international waterway, or is it Canadian? And for reasons beyond me, that matters a lot. And America is saying it's international. They would benefit from it being international. Canada is saying it's theirs. China's staying quiet, because if they say it's international, then people are going to say, well, what about the South China Sea? That's international there. So they don't want to open the can of worms. So Canada is doing a lot of things. We would see surveillance planes going over, zigzagging, practicing, I assume, to look for submarines when the time comes. The Dew Line, which is now called the Northern Early Warning System, which is towers all across northern Canada. So if missiles come to North America from Russia, they're going to get detected before they get anywhere populated. The Inuit towns had a huge research center that was like a massive modern university-style building. It dwarfed any other building in the center, because that was soft power. So if anybody says, well, you can't just put a bunch of missiles up there and claim it's yours, they can say, oh, we're doing stuff, we have people there. This is a bit beyond like what anything I know. This is just sort of colloquial what people were telling me. Obviously, a lot of native and Aboriginal people in lots of different parts of the world are getting reparations for many of the legacies of colonialism. But the Canadian government seems very motivated to give Inuit people a reason to stay there and not have a brain drain, because they want Canadian citizens there. This is just what people told me. I don't know how true that one is, because obviously the Inuit, like many, suffered at the hands of the Brits. And the Coast Guard boats look like big militarized boats. So all of these things are like Canada's way. And we saw a lot of NATO fuel tanks along the way, like with pipes down to the shore. And all of these things were signaling one thing. The Arctic is opening up, and Canada needs to stamp its authority before people start claiming the Northwest Passage as an international route. And then it's, you can imagine scenarios like Chinese shipping containers coming up between the gap between Alaska and Russia, skirting the north of Alaska, skirting the top of Canada. That boat could have all sorts of spyware on it. And there will be politically awkward incidences, like a rescue mission for a fishing boat which turns out to be full of Chinese military spyware or stuff like that, or vice versa. We're not angels, and Russia in particular, they've got a huge seaboard. They're desperate for a warm water port, and they could get one now in the Arctic. So it's politically very interesting.
Yeah, it's a quite complex one. Let's finish with the $1 million question. What next for Mark Agnew? Any polar bear?
Well, I have a 1-month-old third child, and my children are now 3.5, 2, and 1 month. So that sort of stops any big thing for a while. But then again, I don't know if I need a big thing, certainly for now. As I say, now that I've understood my motivations as those intrinsic ones, I can sort of pick and choose. I can say, well, this one's a challenge, and this one's a relationship, and this one's an experience, and this one's all three. The Northwest Passage was all three. It's challenging, beautiful experience, amazing relationships. But right now, so my dad is in his 80s. We go cycling for 3 days through the Cairngorms, which is a mountain range in Scotland. That's about relationships. That is fulfilling. And when all is said and done, in 30 years' time, what will I look back on more fondly? The Northwest Passage, or like trying to cram in adventures with my dad in his 80s? You know, so I don't need anything. I don't need anything specific. I'm just talking to my wife today about trying to cycle down a route down the River Spey next summer and taking my daughter on her first camping experiences. So those kind of things will fulfill me, and they sound very boring, but I really have, like, you know, like a movie is so full of perfect points. The call to action, the almost recovery, the final slump before the final, and then the end of the movie, the hero comes home with like a new glow and perspective and contentment. I've got that. I'm like, I've just completed it. Like, I'm just so happy now. So there's no what next for me. Of course, there is a few things on my bucket list, but with the Northwest Passage, it was like a crushing existential crisis to get it done at all costs. And I almost did it at all costs. I spent everything I had. I burnt bridges. I went when I had a young kid and my wife was pregnant. There was like nothing that would stop me. And this time I'm like, there's things I want to do. And we'll get there. And if we don't, my happiness doesn't depend on it.
That's a very good line to close this conversation. So, Mark, thank you very much. It was a pleasure listening to you. I think you had a great storytelling, and I think your motivational speeches, they really resonate to people out there. So the link to your website is in the description. Someone wants to contact you, it's very easy. Just get on the description. It's at the bottom. So just get on the website. There's a contact form, your email. So there are different ways to contact you. So there is no reason not to, if they're interested in having you for a speech or for a chat. I think you are more than available. Although I know you have 3 children around you, but you are able to manage your time properly. So thank you very much, Mark. It was great to have you here.
Thank you.
And to everyone watching, I want to extend my gratitude. The Movember series comes now to an end. We stripped away all the bullshit, the fake toughness, the silence, the I'm fine mask. So if tonight hit you on the gut or made you think about someone you care about, make sure to check with them, because we cannot stay silent when we know there is a situation to resolve, whether it's ours or a friend or a neighbor or someone, you know. If you want to support the Movember, the link is in the description. Every cent makes a difference. And yeah, I want to wish a good week for everyone. Take care of yourselves and see you soon. Take care.